The views expressed on this podcast are that of the host and may not coincide with your own. Don't let that deter you from listening with an open mind. The UAP report will be printed in mass quantities is to avoid another pandemic shitigate. Lastly, the shit talk is explicit and your virgin mind is about to get probed. Let's get the show started, fuckers.
Big O! It's showtime!
This is the Tempest Universe.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to the magic of the old and faithful and always in our minds, Ronnie Dawson, we want to welcome a special guest that was actually a speaker at the Laughlin UFO MegaCon. I guess now the one and only Erin Montgomery. Welcome, Erin.
Well, thank you.
So listen, Ronnie was so excited to have you on the podcast because he says your story is amazing, and he said you know man, you gotta reach out to her, you gotta get her on here because she's got a great story. And just looking at the bio that's on your text, your book that's on Amazon, it's quite the story.
It's full of adventure and terror and all sorts of craziness, yeah, but also love and I mean, anything you could want in a really good movie, I think, is my life.
Yeah, there you go. You could definitely see that in the bio that was in there. So one of the things that folks have to understand is that you are what many people that experience this phenomena, you describe yourself as an alien contactee, which a lot of folks, they might experience a UFO here and there, but you're an actual contactee. Kind of take us back to when this first started.
Well, that's one of the really interesting things about contact, at least for me, and I think that it probably is true with many different experiencers. This is not a linear type of experience. My earliest memories happen to be from about 4 years old, but it wasn't until maybe 9 months ago that I had the memory of when I was 4 pop up. And so it's not like I was 4 and I experienced and I remembered it the next day. I was
right.
46 and remembered what happened when I was 4. And so I went through most of my childhood knowing that weird things were happening, but not really understanding. And then when I was about 19 or 20, I started to have these flashbacks and seeing that there was way more going on than I thought. And so I started to have memories of floating up out of my bed and down the hallway and having also at the same time around 19 actual, continued contact with UFOs and ETs, and it all started to make sense. And so it wasn't until I was, I guess in my early 40s, this would have been about 2015, I actually decided it was time to have a hypnotic regression.
Was that like a big step to take at that time, huh?
That was a huge step for me to take because I went from 20 until 40 with contact happening and becoming more and more afraid. I had gotten to a point where I was afraid to turn out the light at night. I was no longer sleeping. I was in this paranoid state of, oh my God, don't come and get me, leave me alone, just leave, don't come tonight, maybe tomorrow, but not tonight.
Right.
And it was constant, and I was exhausted. My functioning was plummeting. I was starting to call in sick to work because I wasn't sleeping at night. And I mean, life was getting really, really out of hand. And I had the year before I guess 2 years before I decided to do the regression, I was living in Roswell, New Mexico. Of all places for a contactee to live, I was in Roswell for a full 20 years. And I hated it there, and I tried to avoid everything. I didn't want to go down Main Street because there's aliens everywhere.
Right.
But
you can't get away with it in Roswell.
You cannot. I mean, that is like the mainstay of the town. There's aliens on Arby's. There's aliens on the corner of, it's everywhere. Even the street lights have little alien eyes on them. And so in 2012, I finally gave in and said, fine, I'm going to go to the UFO festival. And, either determine that I'm just freaking crazy or this is really happening to me. And I sat through several of the lectures, and many of the people talking were talking about things that had happened to them, and I realized those things had happened to me, and it all made sense and came to a head. And I knew that, yes, what I was seeing and what I was experiencing was real. I was not making it up. I was not crazy. This is really happening. And I got to know Yvonne Smith, who is a hypnotherapist, and she does regressions on contactees to help them remember. And so by 2015, things had escalated to the point where I really needed some help. And Roswell UFO Festival in 2015 is when she and I went back to her room and we did a session. And I told her at the time, I want to get back to the trauma. That moment where I became afraid of all of this that is causing all of these trauma symptoms. At the time I was in school for marriage and family therapy, I was working on my master's. So I already knew what trauma was, and I knew the symptoms of trauma, and I could very well identify that's what I was suffering from. And so we went back to the age of 7.
Now that's incredible. And let me tell you, let me just interrupt you for a second, because when you said that you were in Roswell, I promise you, never in a million years did I ever think that anyone that was a contactee would actually be living in Roswell. That is just, it blows my mind.
It was the most ridiculous cosmic joke, I think, that has ever been pulled on me. I hated it there. When I had to move there, I was very resistant. It took me like 3 years to learn the streets because I did not want to be there. And this avoidance actually is a trauma symptom. And so I hated it, and I railed against it, but I was there for 20 years. And it wasn't until the point where I fully came to terms with everything that was happening to me, and I was able to write my book and publish it, that all of a sudden I felt free to leave.
So where was it that you moved from into Roswell? What city?
I grew up in Montrose, Colorado.
Okay.
And I was born in Phoenix, around 4 years old, actually. Well, from about 6 months to 4 years old, I lived in Roswell. So Roswell is not a town that I hadn't been to. But on my 4th birthday, we moved to Montrose, Colorado, and I stayed there until I graduated high school. And when I graduated high school, I went to Las Cruces and attended New Mexico State University. And I was there in that town for about 7 years, and then moved into Roswell because my husband and I at the time, we had 2 young children, and we were just really struggling, and his family was there, and so they helped us out. And then I was stuck, and then I didn't leave. And then, just in January, I moved out of Roswell back to Montrose, and here I am in Montrose. In 2 months, I'm moving back to Roswell. So it's
you thought you got away, did you?
I thought I got away, but now, you know what? It's a personal choice to return. I do not feel trapped. It's totally different scenario now.
Jeez, and all those places you mentioned, they're not exactly, how should I say, unfamiliar to UFO sightings and things like that. These are places that you see a lot of sightings and experiencers around. So,
absolutely.
So you get to the therapist and you say, "Hey, take me back to that time," and you're about to go. I guess you're about to go under, for lack of a better term, right?
Right.
You're about to be hypnotized. Does your heart start to flutter? Holy shit, this is it.
I was really, really nervous. I had never been hypnotized up until that point. I have now been trained in hypnosis, so I've been in and out of hypnosis many, many times. But that was my first time, and I thought, I brought a friend with me, like, am I going to be a zombie after this? Am I going to run into something? Am I going to be halfway out of my mind? But Yvonne, being the most gentle and kind person that she is, was able to really put me at ease and helped me to relax into the process by explaining everything as it was going to happen, and then letting me know that at any point in time when I get too afraid, we can come out of it. Right. This is, I'm not going to be stuck, and I'm just going to be watching it like a movie. It's not going to affect me emotionally. I'm not going to feel that. And just putting that into the hypnosis as it was happening so you can remain calm. And that is actually how you can heal trauma, is by remembering things in a state of relaxation and calm. It's like your mind can sort it out and file it away in a proper fashion instead of being in that traumatized state. So it's pretty phenomenal and wonderful. So yeah, she took me back to the time and just left it open. At that point in time where you became traumatized, let's go there. And I found myself at 7 years old here in Montrose in my bed wondering why the moon was so bright coming through my window. And it was irritating me, and I remember just feeling a little bit frustrated, like, God, why is that so bright? And it was at that point in time that I realized there was a being standing right at my head, at the head of the bed. And I would call her a typical gray, about 3.5 feet tall, large wraparound eyes, elongated head, spindly arms and legs. But she was right there, right at my face. And I remember, and I say she because there was like this nurturing and kind feeling around her. Okay. Not like an active male.
I was just about to ask you that too. You kept on referring to her as a female, so that's interesting. I usually don't hear that.
Right. Well, and I think it was just I was picking up on that nurturing energy that she had, and so as a human, as a woman, just the way it goes. Whether she was female or not, I don't know, but she did have that nurturing energy that I label as female. Anyways, she told me, hey, we're going to go for a ride and it's going to be fun. Just sit back and relax. And then I noticed that there was a being at my feet. And then there was one at the door. So there were 3 in my room. One at the head of the bed, one at the foot of the bed, and one at the doorway. And the being at the foot of the bed, male feeling, active energy, I guess you could say, slipped his hand underneath my foot and levitated me up out of the bed just by touching the bottom of my foot. And those two maneuvered me out of the bed, out of the bedroom, and into the hallway. And then we went up. And we went up, straight up, through the ceiling and through the roof. And the crazy thing about being in hypnosis at the moment was that I could feel my molecules like separating and really? Passing. I could feel them passing through the molecules of the solid material, the drywall, the wood, the shingles, all of it. I could feel it. And that was incredible.
That is just, that's amazing. And all this, and at no point you were like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, or, scream off for mom or dad and say, hey, help me.
No, I was fine. I was like, okay, let's do this, whatever. I felt familiar with her. I was not scared at this point. I was fine. And we, as we came outside of the roof, we were in a beam of light that came from an opening, or what I call an aperture, at the bottom of this saucer-shaped ship. So in the center of it, there's this light beam coming down, and we went up into the light beam and ascended all the way up into the ship through the hole in the bottom where the light was coming from, and it's almost like a conveyor belt. I was lifted over the side and floated down this hallway. And I like to describe this hallway as like looking like the inside of a milk truck. It was shiny, it was metallic, it was round. And they took me down the hallway, and then there was a room on the left that they took me in, and they put me into this chair. And this room looked like a dentist's office. There was this, molded shaped chair that leaned back that I was placed into, kind of strapped into. There was instruments and things all around, and I'm still feeling okay, a little bit concerned with the fact that I have been, strapped in to this chair, like, this is odd. And it was
something's not right here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what? If we're just having fun, why do I have to be strapped in?
This is not fun to me.
It was at that point in time that a different type of being entered the room, and it's that exact moment that flipped the switch to terror for me, just because I don't know why actually this being scared me so badly, since these little ones didn't scare me, but he was very, very tall, very thin, like spindly thin arms and legs, and very thin body. He had a head that was triangular shaped, and he had mouth parts that moved, like mandibles perhaps.
Okay.
I can't focus on his face because I was still too afraid. So it's like I can get vague shapes, and I cannot recall that as clearly as I would like to. I would say perhaps this was a mantid type being. I have been told that they have worked in this capacity as like a doctor type entity, and I came unglued, started screaming, and I remember him telling the other ones, if you don't calm her down, you're going to have to take her back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then the female entity like looked into my eyes really close, and I was able to calm down and regulate myself and felt fine. And it was at this point in time that the tall creature came forward with like about a foot long instrument, silver in color, and it had like a prong at the end, 2 prongs like a fork. And inside, maybe about the size of a dime, was a gelatinous pink mass, biological thing. And they opened my mouth and inserted this mass into the roof of my mouth.
Oh, boy.
So I'm assuming that it was some sort of implant or something like that. Why it was biological, I don't know. Were they cultivating DNA so that my body wouldn't reject it, or was it an upgraded type that wasn't metal or glass? I don't know. But he did that, and then he left the room. I was unstrapped from the chair and taken to the window. There was a window in the room that was like ceiling to floor, and I could see earth down below, and I'm holding the hand of the female entity, and felt like I kind of got a lollipop and a pat on the head, and I was taken home. And so that is what came out of that regression that I had.
So now your question to the hypnotherapist was basically, take me to my first traumatic experience. So it went down to 7 years old. But do you think that maybe, and of course you've talked to like 1 billion people already about this, but do you think that possibly that you were so calm because maybe this started at an earlier age and it just wasn't so traumatic?
I think that's possibly very true, and I do have a memory from around 4, but I was, and it's like 30 seconds of memory is all I have, and it was last year. I was probably doing a show just like I'm doing right now and just talking about things, and it flashed in my mind. I remember sitting on the floor of a very round, very white room, and there were several other children with me, and we were levitating blocks with our minds and kind of passing them back and forth. And I remember a little boy passing by the doorway that was to my right, followed by a gray alien type being. And so that I was like, okay, so this did start happening before the age of 7. And my fear of the mantid type creature at that moment makes me wonder if something had happened with the mantid type creature before that.
Right, exactly.
As well. Yeah, I do know I've had another experience with them, but I don't know if that was before or after. I don't have that timeline down. Like I said, it's not linear. It's hard to tell.
It is. So here you have, you've got, you finally have that answer. This is my traumatization. This is where it started. So when she brings you out of it, what goes through your mind?
Well, when she brought me all the way back into my body in the time and place and oriented me like that, it was just like, wow, okay, this is real.
Right.
I had already kind of come to terms with it, but it wasn't like solidly real, and I didn't remember all of these details, and the details were so incredibly vast, feeling my molecules. I mean, how the heck would you remember something like that?
Right.
And she said, Erin, this is another thing that I want to tell you to help solidify this as truth for you is I have heard about that type of implant in the roof of the mouth with that instrument 2 other times before.
Oh, really? Jeez. Yeah. That kind of validates that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it takes a while to fully process everything that happens, it just from the regression itself, because that's just unlocking something huge and being able to come to terms with it and say, wow, okay, yeah, this is my reality. This is true for me. Okay, so now I have to really redefine my life.
Exactly. And that was my next question, because you basically have like about 30 some odd years, right? In between when that happened and when you went to have the hypnotherapy done. What was life like in between that?
Life in between was full of nightmares. It was a lot of very bizarre things happening, but there was contact. There was contact the whole time. And there was contact afterwards. Yes. And, while I knew I was a contactee at the same time, I didn't, quote unquote, know.
Right.
I was thinking maybe I was, going insane. Most of my contact happens when I'm sleeping and I get woken up or something like that, or it becomes very dreamlike, which I think is being explored a lot with contactees right now. Like, why do these things feel like a dream, but we come back with bruises? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so we're starting to really explore that and trying to understand in like an expanded consciousness type of way. But, when I was about 27, so, 20 years after 7 years old, I was determined to stay awake because I knew they were coming. There's this feeling that comes over me when I know something is going to happen, which I think led into my fears and not wanting to go to sleep at night because I knew that something was going to happen. I was visiting my mom. My children were really, really young, like 2 and 7, I guess they were. And staying with my mom here in Colorado, were visiting from Roswell. And it was August because we were outside watching the Leonid meteor shower. And I had that feeling come over me. It's kind of like a sinking in the belly, like, oh, shoot, here we go.
Right.
But in my mind, I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to stay awake. If they're going to come, I'm going to be awake and I'm going to greet them at the door. And I did. I stayed awake until about 3 o'clock. And my brother's cat, he had, grown up and moved out of the house and everything, but my mom still had his cat. And his cat was pacing back and forth in front of the bedroom door that I was sleeping in.
Oh, really?
Back and forth. And I knew that something was up, because that cat didn't ever do that before. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, there were 3 beings that came into the room, and they were gray types, but they were different than the woman or the 3 entities that were there that took me at the age of 7. These were much smaller, maybe about 2.5 feet tall, very, very tiny. And they had very large heads and, the large black eyes, and they were the gray skin tone, very much similar to a gray, but very, very small. Anyways, they entered the room and they had this joviality and this joy and this, I was slammed by a wall of love. It just
really, hey,
the energy of love just overwhelmed me, and tears are flowing down my face. And they were just beautiful, beautiful beings. And one of them kind of crawled up onto the bed and he put his hand on my chest and he told me, in 37 you're going to have problems here. And then everything switched and it felt like a dream. So I either it was astral traveling, I was taken on, I don't know what really exactly what happened after that, but I did it. I stayed awake and they were real and they were there. The crazy thing is, 10 years later, when I was 37 years old, there was a lump in my breast, and it was found, and there was a mammogram was done and everything like that, and an ultrasound, and there was a lump, but I was fine, but there was a lump, and it told me that he actually told me that to help verify that this is real.
Right, exactly. There, another validation for you. That's amazing, right? That I mean, they got it down to the age. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was, and it took me a while to realize that. I was afraid, like, oh my gosh, what if I have cancer? But then, after a few months, I was like, holy cow, that's what that little dude told me.
Mm-hmm. That is amazing. I have a question here from the folks that are listening live out of Texas. And the question is, do you believe that you use any form of psychic skills to communicate with them?
All the time. All the time. I was actually taught how to do this not too long ago, maybe 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And not like I didn't know before, but they kind of explained it in a better fashion. Of course, in a dream farm, because that's how most of this stuff happens. But I was shown a bee, and the bee was vibrating, how they do their little dance and communicating with the others through vibrations. And I was told in that moment, like, pay attention to this because he's communicating with the hive. And if you raise your vibration, which comes through meditation and concentration and just filling yourself up with this love energy, and you can just create a higher vibration in yourself, you can communicate with the hive. And that hive is this, these beings, they do have a collective mind. I believe that's why they are so telepathic. And you can tap into that, and we can communicate with you very easily.
So do you think that you think they're biological?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Because I know there's a lot of folks who think that they're not. Almost like a mixture. I don't know, what would you call that? Like a hybrid, but not necessarily entirely biological. But
like a mechanized.
Yeah, something.
Yeah,
like that.
they very well could be cyborg types. But I also believe that there are so many of these entities that are very similar looking that it's easy to confuse them.
Yeah.
And I do believe that the ones that were telling me about this are the ones that took me when I was 7. I feel it that they were the same people, and having this collective mind and being able to dial into it in a way. And they were actually showing me, like, if you had a soundboard in front of them and you could you can turn it up or turn it down, that particular channel. Like, and if I want to use it in a psychic fashion on purpose, I would just dial up the volume so I could hear it easier. But if I have work to do otherwise, I could turn it down. And so that was actually very vital information for me. But yes, absolutely. I believe that they communicate through psychic type of connections, and I believe that they help me with that as well.
So so after you went through this, you got your answers. Did you ever go back for additional regression sessions?
I have done one other regression session. That would have been in 2018, actually the year that inadvertently met Ronnie.
Oh, there you go. Oh, you've known Ronnie since 2018. Look at that.
Well, we didn't even realize that, though, until we were in Laughlin. And
okay. I
was looking through his flyer that he had with several, different things. And I was like, hey, I'm right there in that picture. Because we actually did a tiny TV spot together. And that was very weird. It was a weird connection, and I think that he and I and his wife have talked every day just about since we were in Laughlin, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that is amazing! And actually, he just posted in the live chat, "Dirty secrets everywhere." So.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, in Roswell.
That's Ronnie right there.
So in 2018, at the UFO festival, I had scheduled another regression with Yvonne, and I wanted to because I had a flash of memory come back. Like I've said, you have these weird flashes that happen all of a sudden. And I was married at the time, and my husband had gotten out of bed in the dark and he was using his cell phone as a flashlight, and he accidentally flashed me across my face. And in that moment, boom, I had this memory of standing outside with a bunch of really small beings, gray looking, but their throats were glowing a purple. It was very cool.
Yeah.
Whoever they were, but we were excited about something. We were excited, and I knew something was about to happen, but that's all I could remember. And I went to Yvonne saying, if I was excited about contact, I want to know what was going on.
Exactly.
I want to go there.
So he triggered this memory.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Inadvertently, have no idea how it happened or why, but flash of light in my face, and boom, I remembered that little snippet. And so she said, okay, let's do it. And we went back to that moment, and it was not as exciting and fun as I thought. Which, there is that be careful what you wish for.
Right.
But it was pretty mind expanding what happened. I was like either 10 or 11. I was with my father at a softball tournament in Durango, Colorado. And he had told me for years prior to this that at that tournament we were staying at like a condo, and like the whole team was sleeping in there. So I know I was sleeping in the dining room, like under the table or some weird thing like that. And he said I kept getting up out of the sleeping bag and trying to go outside. And he would say, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I said, I just got to go. And he's like, what, do you have to go to the bathroom? What do you need? No, I just have to go. And he would put me back to bed.
And this wasn't like sleepwalking. You were actually like coherent.
I guess. I don't know. I don't remember it. But he tells me this story of me trying to get out. And so I actually went back to that night and what happened after that. And being outside with these beings, waiting, and there was a ship coming, but it wasn't just me. There were many children and many adults, like standing in this clearing, waiting for this ship to arrive. And in the regression, I can hear the ship descending into the trees, because this is a forested area,
right?
And just hearing all the trees like scream and screech and break as the ship comes down between them. And we lined up and filed onto the ship. I was barefoot, and I remember feeling the surface of the floor inside the ship. And this is the details that can come out of regression. It is wild, but it felt like astroturf under my feet.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was black astroturf. I don't know. And again, I was led off to a room on the left-hand side of this rounded hallway, very similar to the ship I remembered when I was 7. And I was, like I said, around the age of 10 or 11, which means right at the time of puberty, and I was stripped. I was put in the bed, and I went through my first pelvic exam, and that is not a fun thing to do when you're a kid.
Right, no kidding. Jeez.
Especially by beings that are not humans, and you don't understand what's going on. And I remember being really upset and confused, and they had placed something on top of my head. It was like a conical hat with these weird wires, and I knew they were stimulating some part of my brain at the same time. And then when they were done with this and they helped me get back dressed, I was taken into a totally different area of the ship. And the room that I was taken into was almost like a gymnasium. It was huge. And the ceiling was like a geodesic dome where there was like a honeycomb shape all over the ceiling with these pipes or these conduits or whatever that were holding up this arched ceiling or dome, I guess, more. And I could see stars on the other side in between the ducts or whatever it was. And in the room were several podiums, and behind each podium was a being, and in front of the podium was a child. And I was taken up to one of these podiums, and the being that was on the other side was very, very tall. His skin was like a mottled, chalky white. If you've seen the movie E.T., at the end when he's sick and dying, that's what this dude's skin looked like.
Yes.
Yeah, very much like that. And he had very round eyes. His head wasn't elongated in like a tall way as you think the Greys are. It was more of a side to side elongated,
right?
And actually pretty much like E.T. itself, but a little bit. I mean, he wasn't shaped the same. He was very tall, very slender. He had on a uniform of some sort, and And he taught me about how to activate the chakras of the body, those energy centers in the body.
Wow, isn't that something? So this is probably is someone that people usually identify as a star child, or like right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, yeah. He also taught me how to manipulate gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember flying around the room and not wanting to come down, and him getting really irritated at me, like, you need to, we've got stuff to do. And it was at this point in the regression where I could not go any further. Yvonne would say, "What happens next?" And my body would just start vibrating, and it felt uncomfortable. And she was like, "Okay, cool, but what happens next?"
Right.
But I could not penetrate any further into the memory, so I don't know what happened after that. And she was able to pull me out, and I did remember that around that same age, that puts me about fourth grade, I think. I remember being in school in the playground, and being with my friends at recess, and telling one of my friends pick me up, and she would pick me up and put me down, but then I would shift my weight a little bit and say pick me up again, and she would, but she couldn't do it.
Really?
So there was something that was retained from on ship, learning how to manipulate gravity and being on Earth, and knowing how to still do that.
That is just
cool.
It is wild. But so you've got all these memories that are slowly they're coming back to you and things like that. How do you move forward? Like, what's your new direction? Because right now it feels like you've got the truth, so it kind of deviates your life a little bit. So what happened to the new Erin, after all these revelations?
Well, the new Erin actually listens very closely to what these people are telling her in her head, and that could be a sign of insanity, or it could just be that I have good connection with the ETs that are talking to me.
Right.
It depends on which direction you want to go with this, but they tend to give me signs and direction. And in fact, before I even had my first regression, I was very much led to go back to college. I was a librarian. I was an English major. I had been working for about, I don't know how many years at the time, 6 or 7 years at the Roswell Public Library. I was very happy in my career. And then all of a sudden I was told I needed to go back to school. And it became an absolute compulsion. I needed to go back to school. I needed to figure out, I needed to get my master's degree. And I thought, why?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm fine. But no, I had to. And then it dawned on me that I had to go into psychology of some sort. And I ended up in this marriage and family therapy program. And, as I've worked my way through PTSD from contact and other things that have happened in my life, that's not the only trauma that I've had to deal with. But simultaneously working through the trauma and learning this new trade, it has brought me to the point of, okay, I've got a handle on this. I'm understanding this. I am accepting of this, and I will invite it in. As far as contact goes,
right?
I'm secure with this, but a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are not at that point, and they are terrified, and they need help. And so that is where I'm at. I am, I've done hypnosis training. I am hoping soon to be able to be trained a little bit further into regression, as far as being able to work with other contactees. I'm still waiting on that little bit there, but as a marriage and family therapist now, working with people who are suffering in this way is absolutely my focus. I also work as a shaman and a healer, so just kind of taking the spiritual and the mental and the emotional, and all of it, mix it into one, and healing the whole being that is struggling with the fact that there is more out there than normal medicine or regular therapists are going to be able to handle.
Exactly, really is. So in your story, you've been a few places since a kiddo to adulthood. Has there been anyone else in the family that's experienced the contactee life?
Yeah, actually there has been. I found out Oh, I guess it was after I started to realize what was going on with me that my grandmother told me that my grandfather, who had passed away at the time, had an experience himself back in about 1930. He was courting her at the time. He was walking home in the dark in a small town in Texas. There's not going to be street lights.
Right.
And a light shone down from the sky onto his head, and he became terrified, and he ran the rest of the way home, dove under the covers, and so we know that he had contact. Many years later, I was talking to my aunt about the same story, and she said, yeah, well, something that my mom left out was the fact that he was very sick that day. Like he had an upper respiratory infection, tonsillitis, something like that. He was really, really sick. And the next day he woke up completely cured. He was fine.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we might have had some missing time there or something like that.
Yeah, I am assuming that he did.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that he did. My aunt, who told me that story, I was living with her when I was pregnant with my oldest child, her and my grandmother both, and my aunt had several days worth of seeing, like, what is it, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when you can see the ship that's landed with the beings underneath.
Yes.
There was a ship that was landed, and it was like on her way to work, and she would see it on a daily basis and could see the beings milling underneath, and she was fascinated by that and told me about it at the time. And my father has seen ships, but doesn't say he remembers having any contact with anybody.
Wait, let's go back to your aunt for a second, because
sure.
I would tell everyone if I saw a ship with a bunch of little dudes under it, for damn sake, I would be calling everyone. So she would just see them, and it was like, okay, what's going on here?
She told me about it, but I don't think she felt comfortable talking about it.
Well, yeah, we got the stigma. Yeah, I get it.
Definitely, and this would have been mid-'90s. Where were we? We were in Carlsbad, New Mexico at the time, and she was traveling to Lubbock.
There you go.
I can't remember which area. It was either El Paso or Lubbock. I can't remember which, where she would go to work. But so she didn't really talk about it. But we watched UFO files and stuff like that all the time on TV together as a group, and so it was really an interesting time for expansion. But some of my cousins have had experiences. Many of the family are psychic. And
there you go.
And then my children have had experiences too. So there's 4 generations right there of contact.
Yeah, I tell people on the podcast all the time, if you see something on the side of the road, a little bit into the woods, get the hell out. Because in the stories, people get the hell out the car and they want to walk to it, and then they're upset because they're missing like 5-6 hours. Well, that's your fault. You got out of the car. Get the hell out of there. I mean, come on.
You say that like you can control yourself.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Oh, that is hilarious. By the way, if you guys don't know, we're speaking with Erin Montgomery, author of Dirty Little Secret: Confessions of an Alien Contactee. So you've got the text. You put everything into the text. Is there is there one dirty little secret, or is there like a whole bunch of them?
There's so many. When I wrote the book, the main dirty secret is just the fact that so many of us contactees carry this as a stigma, and we don't want to tell anybody about it because that makes us crazy. That makes us an outsider. That makes us, we're vilified. We're made fun of. We just being contactees. If you think about the movie Independence Day and how much Randy Quaid's character was teased because of what happened to him, we don't want to go through that. It's embarrassing, and it forces us to live this very dual life that is uncomfortable and not fun. And I knew, being in the mental health field, that if I come out with this, I could be ostracized, I could be fired.
Exactly.
And I knew it.
Right.
I wasn't. I was actually, a lot of my colleagues actually bought the book and talked to me about it. And my boss sat me down. He's like, "What's your big deal?" I'm like, "I'm just, freaking out. What do you have to say about this?" He's like, I read what your book is about, and you're not the craziest one on staff, so chill out.
Oh,
And
so were you like uneasy at that point? I mean, I'm like, whoa.
I was like, oh my God, this is going to be bad. But no, it was fine. He said, Erin, I don't care what it is that you've got going on, as long as you've got some other life besides work.
There you go.
Then I'm good. And that's really important in the mental health field. You have got to have a way to unplug and, do something completely different. And, because it's hard to carry everybody else's burdens, and you shouldn't. You have to find a way to put them down. And so no, it was fine, but that it's not the same for everybody.
Right.
There are people who have lost their jobs. There are people who have lost their lives because of these secrets and how they come out. And so, it does become dirty because you're embarrassed. But there's more to it than that. There's a lot of very strange experiences that happen on the ship that are not just like a physical examination and your return to Earth. There's breeding programs, there's sexuality, there's these bizarre things that happen, and you come to in these rooms and there's all these people and they're touching you and you don't know what's going on, and then you wake up going, what the hell happened? And why am I aroused? There's so much bizarreness that happens that I think that it really needs to be talked about and highlighted as part of this experience, because a lot of people are afraid to go this way. They don't want to talk about this stuff because it's embarrassing enough to say you're a contactee, but it's even bigger to say, I was a contactee and there was something happening in a sexual fashion on these ships. Right. And so I don't have any problem talking about it because it's really a very integral part of these experiences. And the DNA that's being created. I mean, why? Why would several generations of a family have contact if they're not monitoring and or altering the DNA sequence?
Very good point.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny you're talking about arousal, alien sex. Well, actually, Ronnie's talking about alien sex in the live chat, so that's his kind of topic.
Yes.
But when you talked about people being ostracized. I remember early on when we first met Ronnie Dawson that that's one of the things he told us about, how so many people would attack him and just try to get him to stop talking about it. And but I feel like today we're getting to a place where it's a little different now, and so you're able to share that story. I mean, you probably don't get down to the nitty gritty, like with everyone, but there's a lot more people that are willing to hear it.
Right. Absolutely. And it's been noted before, and I've talked about it before, but for whatever reason, between 2017 and 2020, there was a huge insurgence of books by experiencers. I started writing mine in 2017. Terry Lovelace published his in 2018. He's a really good friend of mine. And, the story just is exploding, and so many experiences are almost like coming online. It's like all of a sudden there was this influx of books. Like we had to tell our stories right now. And so the books were all published en masse out into the public. And now these people who are realizing that they are contactees now have all of these books to grab and to read and to understand themselves a little bit better. And so there are more and more people that are understanding what is going on. And more people's eyes are being opened, and it's becoming more and more acceptable and normalized and not such a freak thing. Yeah, it's pretty freaky, but it is not necessarily way out in the ether of weird. It's becoming much more realized that this is happening all over the place to many, many people, way more than anybody would ever realize.
It's a lot more common,
Yes.
And it's incredible that people have that avenue to come forward. And it's good because when you have right now the situation we're on, and before the podcast we talked a little bit about the UAP report that came from the unintelligence committee. So this is the situation where people can come together. And just for Mike who's listening right now, thanks to Marco Rubio out of Florida, we had that report. But there's a time when things just all come together. And it seems like right now, probably the next 5-10 years, we're going to be there. We're going to be there where, a lot of people that are hiding the secret can come out and just talk about it openly, and we might have evidence that people can say scientifically, quote unquote, it's a real thing.
Absolutely. And I think that, a lot of people are turning to the government. Let the government tell us. Let the government let us know what's going on. Maybe finally they will reveal. Maybe, maybe not. But the fact is, there are so many of us, Ronnie, me, others, that are speaking about it. This is disclosure.
Right.
We're all talking about it now. And there are hundreds of us talking about it now. It's not just a couple. There are many, many people that are coming out and telling their stories. This is happening to me. This is real. This is what they look like, if somebody's drawn them out. This is, and that. It's almost like a grassroots movement, and the voices will spread and people will talk, and it will become noticed and understood and normalized like that.
Fantastic. I did have one more question in here for you, because we are at the last 9 minutes. And, I said I wasn't going to keep you too late, but you definitely have to come back in the future. I guarantee you that.
Sure.
The question about CE5, whether or not you've practiced it, but, when you were talking about the dream farm, that almost seems kind of like CE5.
Yes, I've never done CE5 in a group outside like it's, you're supposed to do, go into a group meditation, all that stuff. I've never done that. Mm-hmm. But I have, listened to Dr. Greer and long enough to be able to see how he does it, and then experimented with it myself, and have been able to go into my mind and do that. Now, the crazy thing, and another one of those little secrets, and it's maybe not so secret, is that I have a camera in my bedroom at night.
Okay.
Kinky.
Yeah.
I know it's weird, but I've got it in here just in case I can pick up something. Uh-huh. And, if something is happening to me at night, I want to be able to videotape it. And I have hundreds of videos of these strange objects. And they're not just an orb like you would see in a like a paranormal ghost show. These are streaks of light. There are beings that will, like a flash of light, and it's an actual being leaning over the bed. Mm-hmm. There are these square films of I don't know what, like floating through and folding through the room. There's these things that look like a W or an X-wing fighter almost kind of floating around. There are very bizarre things that are picking up. And when I practice the Erin modified type of CE5, they show up in mass. So whatever these things are in my bedroom, I believe that they are interdimensional beings, and I believe that is what CE5 is calling down, and I honestly believe that's what all the ETs and the UFOs are. I do not believe it's interstellar. I believe it's interdimensional.
Interdimensional. That comes back to like kind of a lot of the stuff that's been leaked out of Skinwalker Ranch and the types of video that they caught there. So yeah. that makes a lot of sense. I got one more question for you, but it's all over the place because everybody's asking it. For fuck's sake, let me see what this is. Manny asked her, I have a question. When they took her and when she was scared to sleep, would she ever tie herself or handcuff herself so that they can't take her? Did you ever try to restrain yourself or kind of anchor yourself? I know you got the video cameras going on. I'm just saying.
I know, that's what I was thinking. Let's just take the kink up an extra level. Yeah, no, I have not ever tried to restrain myself to the bed. However, it's an interesting thought.
There you go.
But now I'm no longer afraid, so I'm cool with going.
You have no reason to do it, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that is hilarious. Erin, last word for you. Any future events or speaking engagements, anything you have in the near future that you want to share with folks?
Actually, yeah, I've been picked up by a publisher at this point, and I'm actually revamping Dirty Little Secrets, adding more things
nice.
That, the book is very much more my process of understanding and coming to terms. There's some experiences in there, but not a lot. So I'm going to be adding in a lot more of the actual experiences and things that I have experienced into the book. I have published another book, and going to be revamping that and coming out actually with like an oracle deck that is attached to it as well. Yeah, I love to write, and so I've got many different writing programs, or not programs, but projects lined up for myself. I don't have any other speaking engagements as of this moment, so anybody that would want me to speak at a conference can go ahead and give me a call.
There you go. Now, was that your first speaking engagement?
It was my first speaking engagement in person. I had done the UFO con online back in March, and so that was really cool that I was able to do that. And then Laughlin, it was pretty amazing being up on stage and speaking for the first time like that. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I could only imagine. I know that was kind of the highlight of Ronnie's experience. For the pictures that I saw, everyone was having a great time, a very open atmosphere. So I could just imagine that at least you were in a situation where you were able to freely and, without any backlash or stigmatism, were able to share your story. And that's really good.
Absolutely.
You got to love those UFO conferences. So, Erin, thank you very much for coming on the show. We appreciate it. You've been an amazing guest. And I thank you so much. We'll be in touch. And maybe we can, one day we'll get you and Ronnie on together. And then
that would be fun.
Yeah, we can hash out all that alien sex stuff. So that'll be quite the episode. I thank you again, Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That was Erin Montgomery here with us on the Tempest Universe. If you want to know about the story, if you want to get into Amazon and see what the rest of the story is, get on the link. It's in the description. Download the book, order it on paperback, whatever you got to do. It is an incredible, fantastic story. And let me tell you, for Ronnie to be excited about it, and we all know how crazy his story is, but how intricate it is, and how you hear Ronnie time and time again tell the story without missing a beat. I have a feeling that Erin Montgomery is the same way. These are contactees. These are folks who are not in a dream state. They are going through interdimensional situations, experiencing all these different type of aliens that a lot of people, really not all of them get to meet. But still, it is fascinating. And, I hope you guys learn something from this. And if you're a contactee, we'll welcome you on the show to come on and share your story as well. I thank you guys. We'll catch you next week. And as I say, ciao.
I'm a selfish kind of person with a soul trying to fly. I aim to break the laws of nature and learn to love before I die. I was naked then, I'm naked now, and my nakedness is my sole account. I'm unfaithfulness, I'm a fucking clown, but I tried my best, yes I tried. don't die. Defying laws of Mother Nature. Help me see beyond the line.